Hello and welcome to one more episode of Dearly Yours. This was an unsuccessful series till few months back because I was unable to get two people at one go. Now this is the third recording I have in sequence where I've got two people at one go, and this one 5 minutes prior to beginning the recording. Welcome Urmila and John. Um, I had a question in my mind since morning. So I'll begin with that, and both of you can uh, answer differently. The idea was, since I have no clue who you are or what you do, and generally I land up asking, like we do, what do you do? I thought that's a very restricting question. So I'll begin with, who are you? So, Urmila, you want to begin? Ladies first.
Okay. Yes, thank you for inviting us for the podcast. And yes, I find it quite an interesting concept that you have for one person or two people. When you ask me who I am, I most definitely don't know. And I think that the whole of life is for figuring that out. And I am nowhere near figuring it out. But incidentally, I am on a journey of figuring it out, which that I find is not usually the case. So I find that I am happy to share with you that I am on a journey of figuring out who I
Yeah.
am.
John, how do you define yourself? How do you see yourself?
Yeah. Thanks for hosting this, Sundar. It's a very nice idea,
Thank you.
and I realized that in my journey of self-discovery, it was mostly not only my image of myself, but what I thought was the other person's image of who I was. So it was an interplay of these two things, and I realized that. Uh, this is a very paradoxical situation with humans that the mind dominates in giving perception, and often I'm buying into the perception of the way I see things and not as they actually are, and this also applies to who I am. So I found that this is not as exciting and interesting for me as it was. It's more practical aspect. Okay, what is it that excites me? What is it that fulfills me? Uh, what are the drives that are forcing me to do things? And what are the drives that where I feel very harmonious with other people and with life, which I do. I think that I'm more preoccupied with that now. But it's a
Okay.
very interesting question and very
Yeah.
thoughtful.
This is surprising because one of the things, this is one of those mornings when I woke up and I was feeling very lost. Most times, while the idea of me keeps fluctuating, depending upon the day or the time or how I feel about my work or my personal state of mind or whatever it is. But today I was lost, and bathrooms are a good place to think all these things. So first thing, I was just sitting and I was saying, "Ke, after a long time, you feel like this. You've been comfortable with the journey of late, practically doing things that require to be done, or you now the past doesn't seem to exist as much, and there is no future that I look to. It's trying to live in the present, but today it doesn't seem that I am present. So who am I?" And it was very uncomfortable for a while. And I was happy about it. I said, after a long time, some discomfort has come visiting me. Let me just find out what it is. And yet, this interplay, like you mentioned, the harmony within oneself, for that matter, was not in peace. Then I think mom called for breakfast or something, and then I forgot all about thinking these esoteric things, what I call them. So my question to you, both of you kind of answered the same thing that I was kind of feeling in the morning, but with a little more uh, stay. Like it wasn't uncomfortable. You are comfortable with that position wherever you are right now, both of you, individually as well. So I want to continue what John is saying. Do you want to take us a little through how does the harmony fall in place for you within and with the interplay of relationships that you have? There will be days when you do not like something. Uh, so where is John in that space?
Yeah, so whenever there is any conflict or disharmony, it is because I have a thought process where I'm not accepting the way things are, or when I am uh, uncomfortable with something which cannot be altered or changed. That's where the conflict is. Because if it's something that can be changed, then there is no conflict because I just engage myself in changing it. But now I have learned to recognize the things which are as they are and how to live with them, adapt to them, and recognize when transformation can happen and when I can bring about change. So the harmony is in this dynamic. So it's not that I'm static, but I learn to recognize the dynamic of life and also realize the dynamic of mind. And when these two marry or are in confluence, then there is harmony. But if my mind is going in one direction and life is flowing in another, life is like a river. So the flow of life is going to be the way it is. And the flow of mind is a projection of how it should be, how it can be, or if you do this, it will become. So this needs to be recognized. The what the mind is saying needs to be recognized, needs to be examined, needs to be experienced, and that's what brings about the harmony.
Okay, he's put it very simply. I don't think it works that simply. I personally have a lot of experience with, I am familiar with the ideas. And when you're trying to retrofit it, when you are angry or frustrated, or say in a traffic jam, of all the things these days with the metro in Mumbai, I think every road is jammed. And when you're in the middle of it, and mentally you already decided to reach some place in some time, and you're unable to, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's not possible. It is definitely possible. But I want to know from you, Urmila, this thing, that word that he used is so beautiful, projection. Unfortunately, we own the projection far more quickly than we disown it. Because we are right into the, it's not like we are two separate people looking at it, although the awareness does create that ability to look at oneself a little more objectively. How does one arrive at that projection? Is it easy? Is it not? How does that process for you?
Um, so for me, I think Johnny talked more of projection. I, by and large, don't have many requirements of life. So even if I'm in a traffic jam, at the moment I've chosen a life where I'm not much in traffic, but I've been driving for uh, almost 2 decades before that. I have no issue being in a traffic jam. I just uh, and I am always leave well in advance, and I end up always being punctual. So if I know, I don't know, it just happens. I don't even stress or plan or I don't know how to explain it. But if I had to be somewhere, I would be able to be in the traffic jam, and I would reach on time also. I don't know how it happened. However, my life is not all rosy and accepting. There are certain areas of shadow in my life which occasionally do come up, and there I would say, would it be projection? I don't think for me it's projection so much. For me, it is trying to find out what part of me is getting terribly, terribly triggered, because it's so surprising to me that something can trigger me. So I have to really check out what it is. So I'm very more, rather than projection, I'm lost in digging deep, trying to see what is there to be seen, kind of thing. It's more like that.
Um, I personally think that I do the same introspection as and when it is possible, sometimes right in the middle of it. Sometimes somebody else may do something, communication, like I've been working with a client and something recently happened. Uh, Last night itself, I write for event companies, scripts and stuff like that. The event is being held today, and last night at 11 they said we are going to call you. There are changes, and I was like, this is not a way to work because tomorrow. She said, but tomorrow is the event, you know. I said, but tomorrow was the event always. It didn't suddenly happen that tomorrow it's being held. And I was, so then they said, we want, okay, you don't give it now, you give it at 7 in the morning, before 7 in the morning, which effectively meant the same thing. Either I let go of my sleep in the night, or else in the morning, my schedule of sitting or whatever I do has to go for a toss. I anyway sent a message, okay, if you want it till 8:30 or something, I'll manage, because by 7 I'm done with what I have and I can spend some time. And maybe the client was unhappy and she didn't respond. And I also, that's the best I could do right in the middle of a job. And this morning, the introspection started with that episode, although it was not restricted to that episode. Because beyond the point, I realized that I would have still done that. In my younger days, I have burned the midnight oil quite a lot. Advertising and events actually work like that. But now I don't prefer to. I give myself some space and time. Also, in interest of the quality of the work I have to offer, I think it works better. Now, with this kind of space where, although I'm prepared to understand what is the context that is being given to me, I'm also taking a call which is saying, look, I'm not being harmonious. Just to use a term, not to play upon the word of harmony as of right now. So, John, uh, if this is an episode that I'm describing, how would you read this scenario? Surely as a
Yeah,
story. Yeah.
yeah. No, I'm glad you asked me because it did occur to me when you said that it's not that simple. That was a very nice thing what you said because it highlighted something. It's actually very simple, but it's
Okay.
not easy.
It's not easy.
It's
It's yeah,
very simple, but it's not easy.
it's not
And
easy.
and the difficulty is always by my thinking, by my thought process. It is inevitably by my thought process. The universe, life, uh, it has no obligation, no requirement, and no explanation.
Yeah.
All this exclusively resides in my mind. So if you needed your sleep and you valued your sleep, it's simple. You value your sleep. Earlier, if you valued your contribution more than your sleep, it's simple. You valued that more.
True.
If the person disagrees with you because they had a different requirement, it's simple. There's a disagreement. And if you look at all this, who is disagreeing? Our minds are disagreeing.
True.
Our thoughts say that I need my sleep. Our thoughts say that I need to contribute. Our thoughts say that, oh, why didn't Surinder give this? I needed it so badly. It is not existing except without the thought. So if we learn to examine our thought, it becomes simple to see that actually there is nothing except our thought process. But it is not easy because we are so habituated and our pathways in our minds are so well established that sometimes it takes a little while, it takes a little effort to observe that, yes, so even if somebody, I'm angry with somebody, the anger comes up because of a thought that, oh, he disrespected me, or she didn't give me what I was entitled to, or why am I stuck in this traffic? This traffic shouldn't be there because I need to reach this important work in time. In the UK, I read, you are not stuck in traffic. You are the traffic. So I started looking very differently when I was stuck in traffic. That actually I'm actually contributing to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Surinder, thank you for bringing that up. The mind needs to be. Yeah, I need to be aware of my thought process. If I'm to have any hope of harmony ensuing, because it is only from a still mind that it could happen, and it's not easy. I agree with you. It takes a lot of mindfulness. It takes a lot of consistency. So I'm glad that you said that.
So in this great word that you use, you gave me the word that I was searching for. There was a question running in my head at the end of when you almost finished, and the word is actually mindfulness. So now I want to break down that word because uh, it's very. Thank you for pointing out that simple is not the same as easy. Uh, so mindfulness again is a very simple process. You just need to be in the moment, not into the past or the future. Technically speaking, for people who may not have heard the term. Uh, I want to bring up an example before I ask you the question, Mila. There are days, like I said, one gets angry and lands up saying something or being upset. Uh, off late in the last couple of months, I think, or a little more, maybe a year or so, I decided that even if you are late, you can go back and apologize or try and make amends or try and close that chapter if it is possible in any manner that is possible in a harmonious way, even if it wasn't harmonious while it was happening. So I sometimes go back and close it and uh, with a humble mind. Again, the one other thing that I had read a lot of time ago, I used to collect quotes. So when two people fight, both come to forgive, but not to ask for forgiveness. So that is something I try and imbibe that, okay, no, while I'm doing forgiving, I'm also grateful if you also land up forgiving and we close the chapter if it is possible. That's my mindset. I try and first reach that point before even making that physical action of going back and uh, apologizing or or maybe even sitting for discussion with a fairly open mind to understand. I have a teenage daughter. She lands up saying, so one another example which is funny. So if say I am getting a glass of water and the glass of water falls and there is some mess to be cleared up, she'll say, if I were doing that, so all adults would land up reprimanding me. But when you do it, there is no one. So why don't you reprimand yourself? This was around 2.5 years back. Now she's a teen, so this kind of example doesn't come up. But and I used to always smile. I said, I will, but give me some time. First, let me bias myself towards myself first. In time types. So my question to you, Urmila, comes from the fact that this process of understanding your thoughts, or even if we were to use your terms, to figure out what is triggering me, or oh, something can trigger me. Um, even after you understand it, suppose you let go of your bias and understand it, to bring it into your system to start enacting with the new, wiser version of yourself. How does that happen? Because intellectually, I think we are all nibbanic. It's only when we have to act we find ourselves falling short, and which is the reasoning has been given very nicely by him, because we are forever following our thought process in this uh, not re-examining them or having a look objectively. So how do you look at this process of from the knowing to the doing? Is there a process? What happens according to you?
Yeah, so there's only one thing which really triggered me very deeply, and it was attached to a very unseen and deeply hidden shadow. So I withdrew from the world completely and all the communities and going out, and I just remained at home between my home and my mother's home basically for 4.5 years because I couldn't find the solution. I was in a position of damned if I do, damned if I don't. So I was in this position where I couldn't move an inch this way or that way because both ways I was caught. So it was a very difficult issue to come out of. And I took 4.5 years of therapy, counseling, peace, quiet, just being busy with my day-to-day chores, being with my family in a very safe environment, um, regular satsang, literally living a very peaceful and withdrawn life and heal the shadow. So it had nothing to do with the other person or the situation or dealing with anything. It had to do with the dissipating of the finding of the shadow, the dealing with the shadow, the facing of the shadow, and the healing of the shadow, which took a very long time. And till finally, 4.5 years later, just now, few months ago, I'm able to go back out into the world. And so when you phoned me, I was for the podcast. I was just in some in between. I'm still in a transitory phase, just coming back out into the world. So yeah.
Glad that you mentioned the period here. A lot of us, I think, walk the path thinking that, like, even the meditation that I am part of, Vipassana, a lot of us who try the course for the first time, on the first course itself, or the first day, or the first few days, and once we come out, we are in a hurry to see the changes within our personality. We intellectually seem to understand. Like when John is talking, I seem to know all of it. But over a period with a lot of deep experience, I have realized knowing it intellectually and uh, experientially is a different thing. Uh, so, John, could you talk to us a little about patience and the ability to allow ourselves the space to acknowledge the shadows? These are all shadows that we uh, embrace far too strongly and are unwilling to let go sometimes. Uh, through various things, obviously it takes time, but very rarely do we allow our mind the space that it requires to settle down, accept. Uh, because all kinds of wisdom, according to me, whatever little bit that I seem to have, comes when I am accepting and just not running into making a decision about it. So how do you see the virtue of patience, and how does it work in your case or experience?
Yeah, Sundar, you very rightly said, that this thing of intellectual, and it has some value,
Yes.
because I mean, input is required from somewhere. Like even the deepest roots of a tree, uh, they guts the water from the ground, from the superficial ground. Later on there may be some aquifers and all that will also nourish it. So intellect has its part in it. So we sometimes learn certain techniques or certain practices, or as I mean, like what Urmila was saying, being in satsang, and we find these things very helpful. But I often say that we are building sandcastles, and when the tide comes in, that's actually when we realize the truth of where we are, because all our defenses go. all that we have meticulously prepared is time and again we find that, and there's something in us uh, which is fresh, which sees it fresh, and this is the thing which is actually where change comes about. And I mean, these are all words we say. We talk about mind and we talk about heart, but somebody who has experienced that when I've left the port and I'm on the high seas, where the compass doesn't work, and uh, then then I discover myself as a sailor, because I recognize it's not only on what I've learned, but in how I can respond to what is happening, which I cannot control. And I call this the heart. This is the heart where in spite of everything, I have trust. Okay, that it will work out okay. In fact, things may not look like they are going to be okay, but something says that yeah, even if it's not okay, it's okay. uh, and these are the things which we cannot learn intellectually. We only get it through experience and through life experience. And also I recognize from myself there are certain primal drives in me, uh, which uh, which I learn to live with. So there is some drive where there's a desire, where there's fear, where there's anger. These are natural and primal drives which are so hardwired into us, and they have been there from time immemorial. I mean, before the logical brain, before the analytical brain, what we call the prefrontal cortex developed, we had this, in the amygdala of our brain, where emotion is very strong, and it's human. What I can do is not to control the feeling, but to try and refine how I respond to it, so that it can be received by people around me, and how I can communicate my anger to somebody else without actually being angry with that person. So I can even mention that, so and so, I was very angry because what you did, my need for respect wasn't there, or I really felt that you didn't take me into account when you made this decision. But if I learn to process the anger and then offer it to the person, it's easier for them to accept. And then I'm more likely to meet my need for communicating with that person, rather than if I communicate when I'm angry. So these are a few things which I've learned from life experience, and some of them have taken a little while to internalize.
Uh, could you little bit expand on the fact of how this came about? Why did you feel, say, continuing the anger example, for example? So earlier, if you were expressing yourself without inhibitions, over a period, why did that introspection join the anger bit? Uh, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. Uh, so I recognized that the anger came up because before that, I was not mindful about my own needs in a transaction. I was more focusing on the other person's need. This happened when, especially during my youth, and I was quite idealistic. And when I joined college, I was always more concerned about the other person. And when the time came when I graduated, I realized that I helped so many other people, but I had not looked after my own needs. Like, what am I going to do after my graduation? When I've become a dentist, so like, where am I going to start working? I had not looked at those things. I was too busy helping patients, helping my friends, and I realized that, yeah, even though that's nice, but life is under no obligation to help me just because I've helped somebody else. There is no obligation. So I may not get the reciprocation. I may get it from certain people, but there's no kind of drive in life which says that just because of my virtue, I will be looked after. So I realized then I had to develop another kind of life skill, which was looking after my own needs. And that's when the anger came because I realized at time when people, when I didn't have respect or when people were not including me in the equation, that anger was like a warning sign that some need of mine is not being met. And initially, it was very new for me. So I didn't know how to process it. I remember the one time, and it was very strong, was when I was staying with my sisters, and there was a caller who was calling them and kind of, not behaving properly over the phone. And one day I happened to pick up the call, and because my sister gave it to me, like and said that, this is the person. And I didn't realize I was so angry with him because, I felt the need to, I felt my sister's dignity was not being met,
Addressed.
the need. And I noticed I got very angry with him and he stopped calling after that. Uh, so it did serve a purpose. But I also then realized afterwards that with people I cared about, with people who meant something to me, even though that anger was good in establishing boundaries, it caused alienation and it caused a little distancing from people who I cared about. And so that's when I started working on recognizing where the anger was pointing rather than expressing it involuntarily. So seeing what need of mine was unmet, which was provoking that anger, and and then staying with that unmet need, and then expressing to that person that this is the need of mine that was not met, and that's why I felt angry. But as I said earlier, I would do it in a place without anger, so it was easier for the other person to receive, and then my need could be met more easily because the person was then willing to listen to what I had.